Hi everyone, this is Clint from Persuasive Evangelism, and today I'm going to go over this book, Navigating Genesis by Hugh Ross, A Scientist's Guide to Genesis 1 through 11. Now, I've heard the name Hugh Ross for years, but I had never really listened to any of his lectures or read any of his books, but one of his YouTube videos came up the other day, and he's a scientist and a Christian, and he talks about how science and Christianity go together and so on. But the YouTube video I saw was about, I think his new book, it's not this one, but his new book about evangelizing. And I would, his interview was like fascinating, and he just talked about giving examples how he talked about Christ and so on. So I started looking up some of his other videos, on his lectures on science and Christianity, Q&A sessions from the audience and so on. And I just really enjoyed his talks, and he has this calming voice and demeanor. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to look up, read one of his books. So I got this book, and I read this book really fast. I enjoyed it. It's like going over the first 11 chapters of Genesis and how science relates to it. Talks about, you know, creation, the Big Bang, the days of creation, the flood, the Nephilim, the Tower of Babel, and all that. And he writes it so it's easy to read. So instead of, all this, he writes it for someone that's not a scientist. So I really liked it, and I couldn't get enough of it. So I read like 80 pages a day or so on. But I really enjoyed this book. For the days of creation, there's different views of creation from Christianity. All the different views believe, God created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1. Basically the Big Bang, from nothing to creation. Atheists believe nothing created everything, from nothing before the Big Bang, then everything. Christians believe God created it. So his views of the days of creations believes, they're long time periods, and the earlier the days of creation, the longer the time periods. They're not all the same time periods, and the last ones are the smallest time periods. Some of that, where he gets that, is the days in Genesis represent different time values. One day, one reference to a day represents the daylight hours, the 12 hours roughly of the day. Another day represents, the full 24 hours, day and evening. Then a day represents a time period like, the day of the Roman Empire, or back in my day. And then also, the first 6 days of creation end with, there was evening and night. The first day, it ends with a ending that day ended. But the seventh day, when God rested from his creation, there's no ending of that. Basically saying that day of rest, God resting from his initial creation, still continues to this day. And God will start creating again at the last, in Revelations, the last book of the Bible. It talks about God will create, once Jesus returns and redeems creation, God will create a new heavens and a new earth. So there's different time periods of day references in the Bible. I just found it fascinating how it all, just from what we know from science, and how it all works together with the biblical account. He was an atheist growing up, and he started reading all the different religions, Islam, Buddha, and all the different ones and their creation stories. And the only one, when he started reading the Bible, he said, this fits with science. And I think he's an astrophysicist. And then he talks about the flood. His view of the Noah's flood is that it wasn't around the whole world. It's more of a giant regional flood, uh, but basically destroying humanity. Like the reference to when it says the flood covered the world, and he says there's different references of that where it doesn't mean the entire world. It means, when, like in the New Testament, it was the gospel was spread through the world, meaning the Roman Empire. Um, and from this reference, he's saying in Noah's time, the world represents where humanity was, and it was like in a regional area. So when the flood came, it actually wiped out, you know, mankind in that area because they hadn't spread across the world yet. Um, then he talks about the Nephilim, the sons of God with the um, I don't know if they were angels or demons or so on, but that interesting. Talks about the long lifespans of mankind at the beginning and how that lifespan would, just through science and so on, get lower down. And then it talks about just all these specific conditions to make life flourish. And if these conditions weren't there, life wouldn't flourish. So mankind was created by God at the right time on Earth's history, and talks about the Tower of Babel and so on. But the book is very fascinating. So I would, and you might not agree with all of it, but great perspective and just how science works on. So it made me like think about a lot of things. Another book I would recommend is John Lennox. He writes about the 7 days of creation. I think his is the 7 days that changed the world. He has some of the same information, like pointing out the different time, how the day references in Genesis represent different time periods and so on. But this is a good book. I recommend it. Navigating Genesis by Hugh Ross. And after I read this book, I ordered some of his other books. I'm going to read those too. And once I'll get those done, I'll give you a review. But anyways, that's all for today. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye. God bless.